Welcome to this week's video, and what we're going to be covering today is how we progress in the weights room. Okay, so as we come to the end of the 6-week challenge and we potentially join Elevate and we carry on with our training, we're not going to see massive increases in weights after month 3-4. All right, it's really going to steady off and slow down. And that's when we get into sort of strength maintenance, and every now and again we're getting a little bit stronger. We're increasing it ever so slightly. It's not going to be massive jumps the same way you have in the 6-week challenge when you're newer to training. All right, so I think this is quite an important video. So please give it a watch and have a listen. It'll help you understand what you're going to be doing post the 6 weeks at Elevate, right, and how we can lift weights and get stronger throughout our whole life without any risk of injury, and almost mitigating the risk of injury, because of course when we're doing any sort of sport, weightlifting, fitness stuff, there's always the risk of injury, but we want to mitigate it as much as possible. Okay, so please watch this video, and hopefully you'll learn a little thing or two to help you progress. What we're going to be covering today then, firstly, we're going to have a look at the principle of progressive overload and what that is and how it affects you as the lifter. Secondly, we'll go into how we simply progress, the key big rocks to say in terms of how we can get fitter and stronger and how we improve it week to week, month to month, year to year. And then from that, as I mentioned, post 6 weeks, post 3 months down the line, how do we progression? So once we have progressed, do we just keep doing the same thing, or do we progress the progression and apply different techniques to push it that way? And then finally, we'll look at the key rules of progressive overload. So the definition of progressive overload then. So progressive overload is when you gradually increase the weight, frequency, or number of repetitions in your strength training cycle. So this could be a number of factors. We could increase the weight we're using to progress. We could increase the number of repetitions at the same weight, or we could increase the amount of times we're doing training. Okay, so for yourselves, usually doing three sessions a week, you might have only been doing 1 or 2, and we've progressed it on by doing another training day. Okay, so the simple philosophy here is in this picture, as you can see. So that's the same man. Okay, so this is a picture called Milo's progression. Person on the left here, same person, sorry, the guy here has got a small lamb, and as he's carrying that lamb, his body, or a bull, so should I say, his body adapts and he gets bigger, musclier, stronger. So then in turn he has to carry a bigger bull, and then in turn from carrying the bigger bull he gets even bigger, fitter and stronger and builds muscle. So in turn he has to carry an even bigger bull. So as the bull increases the load that he's carrying, so does his body. And can you see how if at the end point here where he's at his biggest, if he was carrying that little bull, he would then not be as strong, would he? He wouldn't progress because he's sticking with the same load that he did right at the start. All right, so that's a really good graphic to show how you get, when you get stronger, bigger, fitter, faster, you need to increase the load on your body. Okay, that's a really good graphic. All right, and the challenge, as it says there, this challenges your body and allows your musculoskeletal system to get stronger. As your body adapts, so does the stress placed on it. All right, so put simply, as we get fitter and stronger, we need to increase or adapt the stress that's placed on the body so we keep progressing. So the big rocks here, the big ways we can progress, the most simplest ways and the most obvious ways to use, which you will have been exposed to at Elevate, is on the screen here. So the first one, the big one, which you know we're passionate about at Elevate, is your technique and form. This is a form of progression. So let's use a squat, for example. If you come into Elevate and you're doing maybe not a correct squat or a poor squat, and then by week 2 and 3, we're doing a really good squat, really good form, really good range of movement, that is progression. All right. So that may take us 3 or 4 weeks. So the weight might not change, but if you're moving better, moving correctly and increasing the range of movement, that is progression. All right. It might not be perceived as progression in terms of the attractiveness of lifting big weights or moving a lot of fast weights or heavy weights. But in terms of progression, that is a big rock in terms of progression. Okay. The next one is weight lifted. So we use the dumbbell rack, don't we, in Elevate to show a visual aid of what the dumbbells from 2.5 kilos to 50 kilos and everything in between. When you're creeping up them weights, that's a clear progression. Probably the most common one that people perceive to do with progression is the weight lifted, but it's just one factor, all right? So that's one. Next one, reps and sets. So if we use a 10 kilogram dumbbell and do 8 reps, but next week we're able to do 10, then we've progressed, haven't we? We might not have progressed the weight, but we've progressed the amount of reps and sets, in turn, the amount of volume that the body's doing, and the stress placed on the body is increased. So that's another way of progressing it. And then finally, tempo, which I've introduced slightly at Elevate the last few weeks in terms of pause at the bottom. So you might come down and you might hold it for 2 seconds. So again, the time under tension's increased from last week to this week. All right, so that's another progression. These are the big ones. These are the ones that we get exposed to quite a lot in our day-to-day training and are most common. So these are the ones that you need to understand really. And it won't just be a case of going heavier, all right? It's going to be a case of 1 week you might go up a weight and then you might spend 2-3 weeks at that weight, nailing the technique, nailing the reps, nailing the tempo, and then you might increase, okay? So try to get away from just thinking about the weight, all right? Obviously, during the 6 weeks, I might encourage you, if you're moving quite well, to increase the weight, and that's just to find the correct weight to use for the reps in reserve. But once we've found that, then I will not be encouraging you to do it. I'll be encouraging you to really nail the technique, really hone in on the reps, making sure you're getting every single rep of every single set, and really hone in on your tempo. And only then, when you're nailing that, will you then say, okay, let's increase the weight slightly, all right? So there are big rocks that we need to focus on to start with. So we are 6 weeks in, 3 months in, 6 months in, and we're starting to really nail everything. The reps, the sets, the tempo, the weight used, we're feeling good, everything's great. It's all going to slow down then. This is the key takeaway point, all right? It's all going to slow down, which I'll touch on the next slide in a minute. It slows down. Once you have that steep learning curve and that steep adaptation, things are going to slow down. So we're during the 6 weeks, we'll start off really light because we want to nail form, and you sort of fly through the weights because you've never done this before, or you have done this but you've started at scratch to work on technique. That once you've learned that technique, it's going to slow down. So for example, during the first 6 weeks on a goblet squat, you might go from 5 kilograms to 20 kilograms, okay? The next 6 weeks after that, you won't go from, that's a 15 kg increase. You will not go from 20 kilos to 35. It doesn't work like that. It will slow right down, okay? So you might go from 20 kilos to 27 during them next 6 weeks, okay? And then the following 6 weeks, you might go from 27 to 30. So can you see how the first 6 weeks, it might be a 15 kg increase. Second 6 weeks might be a 5 kg increase. And third 6 weeks might be a 2.5 kg increase, okay? It doesn't keep going at the rate that you originally do when you first start. So it's quite important to note that, all right? So after that, here on the screen are some ways we can increase the load and the progression, how we can keep progressing and keep stressing the body to adapt, all right? So I'm not going to read all these out. I'll just pick a few and just talk you through them. But these, have a good read of these, and hopefully that'll help you understand a little bit better. So some of the key ones that I want to touch on, let me just scan these. Right, so first one, lifting the same load for more reps, which is more volume, all right? So at Elevate, we've had 4 sets of 6 to 8, all right? You will start off maybe doing 4 sets of 6 at 20 kilos. Next week, you might do 20 kilos and you'll do 6, 6, 6, 8. So you add 2 more reps on. So you've increased the volume, all right? Then the next week, if you're feeling good, or maybe the next week you do the same because you're not feeling too good, the week after you might do 6, 6, 8, 8, okay? And then the week after you might do 6, 8, 8, 8, and the week after you might do 8, 8, 8, 8, okay? Then we'd train something else, right? Because you're at the top end of the reps, you've done your 6 to 8, you can't do any more reps because I've capped you at 8. So then you might spend time at the top one, lifting the same load for increased distance. So you might work on the bottom and the second one as well, with better form, more control and less effort. So then opposed to increasing the weight and dropping down to 6, 6, 6, 6 again, you'll then do 8, 8, 8, like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, lifting the same load, the same volume, but better form with more control, all right? And then once that's nailed, then we might increase the load where it says there, 4th one down, lifting heavier loads. So then you increase the load, and now we're back down to 6, 6, 6, 6. We'll nail that, nail that, nail that. When you're ready, you might do 6, 6, 6, 8. From that, and the whole process starts again. And this could be over like a 12-week period. We're not thinking session to session. We're thinking week to week, month to month, all right? So hopefully that gives you a good example of how, like, once we get past the initial 6 weeks, the initial couple of months, it then switches, and it's a long, slow process, okay? So really understand that for me. And if you're a bit stuck on this, please chat with me, and I'll explain it a little bit better in person, because obviously when you just come in the gym, we want to get some good work, and we don't want to sit there talking for the whole hour. So these videos are really important to understand stuff like this, because this is really going to underpin your progression, okay? Right, so some key rules of progression, all right, which I'm going to talk you through now. Right, so progressive overload will never be linear. So what that means is it's never going to be a straight line, all right? So and a good example of this is, if we look at the body fat and lean mass here, it's not linear, is it? It's not a straight line. It comes down, it goes up a bit, comes down, goes up a little bit, down, 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 up, down, left, right. It goes all over the place. But we look at point A, which is the first dot on the graph, to point B, which is the last one. That is a nice, clear decrease, all right? So I need you to understand that, like, it's the same with the training. When you come in, 1 week you might lift 20 kilos and feel really good. The next week you might not. You might feel terrible, and that 20 kilos might feel like 100 kilos. So you might have to back off a little bit, or you might not be able to push it that week. It's not linear, but over the 6 months, over the 12 months, there'll be a clear line from A to B going up or down, depending on whether we're referencing weight or whether we're referencing losing weight. It's not going to be a straight line, okay? So don't think that, like, if 1 week you've gone a little bit, like, you feel like you've gone a little bit weaker, you haven't. So you're just a bit fatigued. You might not have slept. You might not have ate properly. You might have a lot of stuff going on in your life. So understand it is not linear. That's a big one, all right? Progressive overload will not be as fun as it is during the first 3 months. So this, again, a big one. After your first 6 weeks at Elevate, things slow down a little bit, okay? That's when we, like, start getting into it, where, like I said, you're going to be stuck on the same dumbbell for chunks of time, and you've got to embrace it, and you've got to own that dumbbell and think, I'm going to make you as easy as possible over these next month. I'm not just going to keep pushing it and keep pushing it and keep pushing it. I'm going to progress at the right intensity and nail everything before we progress, all right? This is where we sort of differ at Elevate. I'm not going to be like, do it, do it, do it. I'm going to be the opposite. So to the point where I might do your head in a little bit, but I'm protecting yourselves from, obviously, any injuries, any like issues that we're going to have by not lifting correctly. I'm going to look after you in that way, okay? So it's important that you understand after, like, the first 6 weeks to 3 months, it does slow down, okay? Progressive overload sometimes has a mind of its own. Like I mentioned in the first one there, sometimes you just don't feel strong. Other times, when you least expect it, the weight just flies up and you're like, this is mad. Last week that felt dead hard. This week it feels easy. So don't get fixated on it too much, how you feel in session to session, all right? It comes and goes. So just understand that. Next one, progressive overload should never be prioritised over form. Sorry, my dog's just going crazy. Nala, stop it. This one is a big one, that your form should never be prioritised. Sorry, the dog's threw me off. Nala, shut up. So progressive overload should never be prioritised over form, all right? So with that means I do not want you pushing the weight up if it's going to be at the detriment of your form, all right? We're not power lifters, we're not Olympic lifters, we're not elite athletes that if we don't hit this weight that, like, it's gonna hinder our sport and impact. I need you to focus on form at all times, all right? And that's where I come in as the coach and Tommy comes in as the coach. If it isn't safe, we'll let you know, and you need to listen to us, embrace it. We're not doing it to be a pain in the bum. We're looking after you, okay? So never prioritise the load over form, okay? So final one, progressive overload is much harder when you're losing weight. So this is another thing. If you've got quite a lot of weight to lose, let's just say hypothetically, you're 120 kilos and we're trying to get you to 90. That's 30 kilos. So I'm not going to do maths, but is that a quarter? Yeah, that's a quarter of your body weight you're trying to lose. So you're not going to get massively stronger whilst losing a quarter of your body weight, all right? So understand that for me. If your goal is to lose weight, we're still going to do strength training to strengthen the body and get fitter, but we might not see massive increases in weight. Because if you're losing a quarter of your body weight, you're obviously going to lose the ability to lift heavier weights than you did at 120 kilos, all right? So understand if you're trying to lose weight, then it will be a slower progress in terms of the overload of the weight, all right? So to summarise then, after the 6-week challenge, we're playing the long game, all right? Regardless what programming you're doing, once you've got them initial adaptations, it's the long, slow game, all right? So anyone who claims to offer quick fixes, offer crazy adaptations in short periods of time, be wary, because it takes time. It's science, it's facts, it takes a lot of time. And your lifting age will dictate this. I'm 10 years deep lifting, so if I want to go from 130 kilo bench to 140, so that's a 10 kilogram increase, that is going to take a lot of work, all right? It takes time, so remember that. And that's my next point there. Progression takes time. Stick with it, play the long game, look after your body, get fitter, stronger, healthier, and in turn increase your output in life, all right? Next big one, communicate with your coaches. So you need to communicate with me in these sessions when you're thinking of increasing the weight, the reps, the sets, post 6 weeks. I need you to communicate with me. Talk to me. Say, Nick, I'm thinking of going up here because it feels quite easy. What do you think? And we can discuss it. I can give you a progression, whether it be a weight, whether it be an extra rep, whether it be an extra tempo, whether it be a slight twinge with your form, whether it be this or that. All right. Make sure you communicate. All right. And remember, patient wins the race. We're here for the long game. We're not here for short-term fixes. So focus on your long-term adaptations, okay? So quite a long one today, team. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's beneficial. And any questions, please let me know, okay? I apologise for the dog barking halfway through, all right?